just feel like Gordon Bombay would have taken his career to even further heights.
Everything's flashy, everything's cocaine, everything's
Fun.
open wide for some soccer.
I don't care what you think about what your personal thoughts are at home. I care that you hate the Cowboys.
Call this college rule.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Sports Experience Podcast. Chris and Dom here, and just a little housekeeping here. We are down in Engel Studio in downtown Tucson, which is available for all of your recording needs. Anything you'd like. Just a couple comics here, talking some sports and some sports figures and such. Make sure you give a like, follow, and subscribe to us on all our social media accounts, and keep listening to those episodes. Maybe send us suggestions. Maybe you'll have an episode here coming up that you suggested. But we're in the middle of a block here, Chris.
We're in a block, and we're talking brothers in baseball.
Triple B.
Brothers. I think this is I can't remember the last old-timey baseball we had, and we got
Rogers Hornsby.
Probably Hornsby, actually, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
who played
good.
about the same time as these fellers.
With these fellas. These couple of gentlemen.
These gentlemen, yeah, we're getting in the DeLorean about 100 years ago for two baseball brothers, both of which are in the Hall of Fame, and you're going to find out about some really cool shit in these episodes.
Talking first about Paul Waner.
Paul Big Poison Waner.
We were kind of talking about this a little bit where we looked at it, and they were really two of the best Pirates in this era.
Yes.
But like thinking about like if they weren't brothers, you wouldn't really compare them. But comparing them, Paul was just the better hitter. But then he also didn't run into injuries. There's just like all this shit. You're just kind of like, oh yeah.
Paul's like the better brother, as both are Hall of Famers, but just like one exceedingly
better,
more amazing. So we'll talk about Paul first, the older brother, Paul John Waner, born April 16th, 1903, in Harrah, Oklahoma territory.
That's right. It wasn't anything except for a territory at that time. They grew up just like in a farm.
It's it's not even a state yet. It's a territory.
Yep.
We're talking old school America.
Yeah, really though.
He was the third of five kids to Ora and Etta Waner. His dad was from Huntsville, Illinois, and his dad was a baseball player, much like probably every single group of brothers we'll talk about here.
Seriously, though.
Not like a pro baseball player.
No.
Could have been.
Minor league, yeah, but this was before the era of that. But he was a, whatever you want to say it, early 1900s, late 1800s baseball player, and really inspired his sons to get out there and start whacking some corn cobs.
Whacking some corn. Oh, before
Back
I get into
in their
that,
shed. Oh, okay.
Just one thing about his dad I did want to bring up.
Uh-oh.
He was scouted by Cap Anson, member of the 3,000 hit club of the Chicago White Stockings at the time. He declined the contract offer so he could run his 400-acre farm outside of Oklahoma City. This is a different time, Chris.
Well, and then I feel like this might have benefited his two sons who grew up still loving baseball, but on this farm.
Yeah, let's talk about corn cobbing.
Whacking those corn cobs
Whacking in the barn.
Sheds, you know?
Paul, a very astute hitter, one of the best in actually National League history. They would play this game where the brothers would break corn cobs in half and pitch to him, because much like the Martinezes in the Dominican, if you're in early 1900s America, don't have the resources for bats, balls, and gloves.
No, so it was sticks and corn cobs, and he said because obviously the corn cob isn't going to have like a natural path.
No.
You know what I mean?
It's like a wiffle ball.
It's like a wiffle ball. So that's where he really learned to keep his eye on the ball, see exactly where it was going. It really makes sense.
Yep, he had talked about his corn cob days of batting, and he said it helped his vision following the ball, and they played the game by the hour and the zigzag of their flight. I could look at that thing in the barn and just whack it. Whacking it. But, baseball at a very young age. Interesting story. At age 6, his middle name changes from John to Glee. Why does it change, Chris?
His uncle gave him a shotgun.
Which is the most Oklahoma story.
That was it.
Yeah.
I was waiting to read more, and then I was just like, no, we're changing his name now. Why? Uncle Glee gave him a shotgun. A whole shotgun?
Not just a trigger?
That's right. That's right, boy. I'll tell you what, next year, those corn cobs were shot out of the sky.
Oh God, Paul.
It was such a weird little story where you're just like,
You thought
okay.
there'd be more. It's like when Rogers Hornsby's brother died in a saloon. It's like that's the
That's it.
ultimate Texas story. That's the ultimate Oklahoma story.
was
He's got
it.
a shotgun. So he graduated from Central High School in Oklahoma City, and then went to East Central State Teachers College, now East Central University in Ada, Oklahoma. And in 1922, he was actually a pitcher before he became an outfielder.
So
he's a lefty pitcher, by the way.
He is a good batter at this time, but he's also a pretty good pitcher on his college teacher team, where his dad actually wanted him to become a teacher.
Yep.
But I feel like a lot of people were like, this new craze where baseball was like, finally you could like make a tiny bit of money, and like all of that kind of stuff was coming out
Flapper
at this time.
girls, baseball,
Yep.
and prohibition. This is what we're talking about.
Jazz cigarettes. Come on.
Jazz
people.
cigarettes.
So he decides to drop out of college, but I think he had like a 23-4 record. Like
1.70 ERA.
So he was like looked at
He's
as
a prospect. It's
as
not
a pitcher,
like-
yes,
yeah.
yes, but as a pitching prospect, not a hitting prospect, or both, if you will. So
He doesn't really play in the minors at first because he goes to play in Joplin, Missouri, which is the basis of the Roadhouse Bar, but decides not to play in the Class A Western League. He's sent to Muskogee, Oklahoma of the Southwestern League, but doesn't play. But in 1923, he's sold to the San Francisco Seals, who are one of the premier teams in the Pacific Coast League, which is like, at the time there are no West Coast baseball teams. So like San Francisco, Oakland, LA, San Diego, they all have teams that are like the upper echelon of the minors.
yes,
So he goes to San Francisco, and he doesn't really play much at first. He's kind of has a sore arm as a pitcher, and they really don't know what to do with him before saying, "Can you hit, son? Mm-hmm. Can you hit?" And what does he say back to him?
he says he can, and then they actually move him to the outfield, and it's one of these things where it changes his whole career, because he proceeds to absolutely rake for the San Francisco team.
He just comes out of nowhere. He said, "All I did before was chase balls, like shag and fly balls."
Yeah.
Well,
it's crazy to think that he was just so ready to be really a great hitter.
yeah.
Because he really just steps in. And
He's one of, like I said before, regardless of era, this is one of the best. This is a Tony Gwynn playing in the 1920s.
seriously, though,
Like
ball contact is crazy.
a lot of contact.
Woo.
Just like Matthew McConaughey and Jodie Foster. 1923 with the Seals, hits 369, 356 in 1924, and then in 1925 hits 401. So at the highest levels of the minors, you can over 400. People are noticing.
Yes.
He had 280 hits in 174 games.
Well, that's something that we're going to constantly bring up is he plays a ton of games. He gets a ton of hits with a really high batting average.
Well-
so it's not like he's out half the season. It's not like, you know what I mean? Like, he is literally playing like 150 games a season.
He is like
yeah.
Wade Boggs in so many ways, which we'll
Boggsy.
get into later. 1925, I did want to add his younger brother Lloyd joins him in San Francisco.
We'll talk about this more, but he actually talked about the Pirates picking him up.
Oh, yeah?
Later on. Mm-hmm. We'll talk about that.
Let's get into it.
Another episode.
October 13th, 1925, he's sent to Pittsburgh for $100,000 with shortstop Hal Ryan and Pirates owner Barney Dreyfus and scout Joe Devine. And those are the two that negotiated Lloyd's deal in 1927.
Well, it seems like he was definitely one of the highest prospects with this, because it seems like a huge deal.
Oh, at the time, yeah.
So coming up, you can just tell they were like, oh, this guy just hit 400. Like the sky's the limit for him. And yeah, bring him up for $100K.
One thing I did want to add, though, about Paul and his brother, too.
Whoa.
They are not large individuals.
Oh, no, not at all.
No.
Tony Gwynn-esque.
Well, Tony Gwynn could play point guard in D1. These guys are a lot more compact.
I feel like for the era.
Yeah,
you know what I
even
mean?
for the era, short for the era.
They were, yeah.
Paul is about 5'9", 155 pounds soaking wet. They said when he came up, a scout told the New York Giants head coach John McGraw that little punk don't even know how to put on a uniform. And during Waner's rookie season, which we'll get into, McGraw, one of the greatest managers in MLB history, said, that little punk don't even know how to put on a uniform, but he's sent line drives over 3 of my pitchers this past week. I'm glad you didn't scout Hall of Fame pitcher Christy Mathewson.
Well, yeah, because as soon as he steps in, because I feel like there was a lot of bias towards him in the
you can't teach heart, Chris.
Yeah.
Why do you think District 5 won?
Woo!
Can't teach heart.
How do you think a small town team from Minnesota beat Iceland, the country? That's the question.
Right. He's just a small town girl boy living in a lonely world, ready to rake for the Pittsburgh Pirates.
So the Pirates bring him up.
1926.
A day after his birthday. I thought that was cool. His 23rd birthday. April 17th, and he has his first hit against the Reds.
Which is dope.
You know?
He starts a nice little tradition here.
And then we see them have a good season.
In 1926 has a great season, hits .336, leads the league in on-base percentage with .413, and in triples, Frank Thomas with 22.
Come on, just get one.
Just get one. Spread the wealth.
Yeah, and then...
But in 27, guess who joins him up in Pittsburgh?
His brother comes
His brother joins, and Paul has one of the best seasons by a pure, not a power hitter, but like a pure hitter in Major League history.
And they were talking about him and his brother have...
Because his brother's batting leadoff.
Combined probably some of the best, obviously most hits.
That's some powerful stud feeing going on there,
man.
Chris.
It was
some powerful stud feeing.
27, like I was saying, he plays 155 games. He gets 237 hits, 18 triples, and he bats 380. So, just to put it in perspective,
wins the batting title.
The amount of times he's gone up. So it's not like he's going up like players do now, where they're they play 2 out of 3 games. He played every game all the time. He won the batting title.
131 ribbies, and he was not a power guy. So it's all, but the extra base hits are so much with the doubles and triples.
Let's get into the 14 consecutive games with multi-base hits.
Oh God!
That's the thing that anybody that was talking shit, and then this season 1927, when he comes in and just literally explodes onto the scene with his brother, just banging chicks.
Of course they were.
Whoo! This Pirates team, this is probably their best shot at a World Series.
It is, and it's kind of sad because they face one of the greatest teams in Major League Baseball.
Well,
they have a name, for Christ's sake.
I really wanted to bring this up because him and his brother have really great World Series.
They both do.
And they get swept.
It's the opposite of Barry Bonds with the Pirates. It's just so mean.
Because they really have great series. He literally goes 5 of 15.
He hits 333. It's what you want.
And then the Yankees are so much power.
Murderers Row, if you don't know everyone.
They're obviously, everybody is raking that. You know what I mean? He did win the NL MVP.
Which is dope. That's so cool, though.
Yep.
And to hit 380... That's like a George Brett season. What the hell?
Yep.
But that's the thing. He's almost lost to history outside of Pittsburgh nowadays.
Oh, yeah, for sure, because they didn't win that World Series. Everybody wants to talk about different guys from this era, but him and his brother...
Just kind of lot
doing it, man.
The following season in 28, he's a Sporting News All-Star team for the second year in a row. He's loses the batting title to Rogers Hornsby. You know what he hit that year? 370.
Yep. Just with 50 doubles.
Come on. 19 triples. Mm-hmm. He's second in Pirate, I believe, team history this year. 223 hits. And led the NL in doubles with, like you said, 50 and runs with 140. And he bats cleanup. He doesn't even bat leadoff like his brother.
No. And he still leads in runs because he gets on base so much.
29, he holds out for more money. And, he wants $18,000.
I was just going to say, did you see how much he's holding out for?
So bad.
it's just so brutal.
He still comes in. The Pirates come in second this year, and this is kind of the era where the team is really good, but they can't get over that kind of Cardinals and then random team Giants hump.
Third season in a row, 200-plus hits. This season, he actually hit 15 home runs, which is the most he's ever hit. He's not a home run hitter. We said this. He's just straight up a contact hitter. But for some reason, he was like, hey, give me that money, and I'll show you these 15 home runs.
It's like you put Tony Gwynn in a trash compactor and took away all the melanin. That's pretty much it. This dude could rake.
Yeah.
Rake as a lefty. In the offseason, absolute stud in 30 and 31. Those 2 years combined hit 346, 67 doubles, 147 RBIs, and had a .906 OPS. Do you know how many home runs he hit to achieve that, though? 14. He's just line to line all over the field for them.
And this is the first time the Pirates actually had a bad team in 31. This is the first time they went below 500. And this is what they were saying was just like him and his brother made them, I wouldn't say championship contenders because they really had that one thing, but I guess they were contenders just kind of going into it.
Take one or both off that roster and they're in the cellar with
they're in
Boston
the cellar.
and
Oh, yeah,
Philadelphia.
for sure, for years.
Yeah.
So this is the first year that in 31, that they actually go below. 32, come right back. NL record again for doubles. 62, he had 4 in one game. Just to think about that as the opposing pitching staff, where I imagine it was one pitcher because that's just the way it was.
Yeah, they just threw you out there until your arm fell off.
Another double. Son of a bitch.
You know what? I'm just going to hit him so he only gets to first base.
Yes, I'm just going to plunk him.
While he wasn't as an awesome defensive player as his brother out in center field, he did lead right fielders that year in assists with 28 and also had 8 double plays in 31. So, I mean, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Like, he's an all-around player. Like we kind of talked about with Hornsby, it's like, oh, well, you just know these guys for all the batting titles because there aren't those, like, metrics at that time. But when you go back and look, you're like, oh, yeah, these guys could play.
Yeah, they're good baseball players. That's why the Pirates were good for, like, these years. And if we had wild cards, they'd be in the playoffs all of these years.
Oh, every single I mean, because they're in the top 2 to 3
every
in the
year,
NL,
except for that one, except for 31, and that's what they were saying. That this was his first year that the Pirates went below 500, and everybody was like, "Whoa, what's going on?" They come back in 32. Don't make the playoffs, but still, I think they get second. They do. They get second in NL, both 32 and 33.
Yeah, 33 makes his first All-Star game.
First ever.
Yeah, first ever All-Star game.
First ever
which
All-Star
is, he
game.
had talked about it at Chicago's Comiskey Park. They gave rings to all the participants, but they did it in alphabetical order, and he wasn't sure about the quality, and he said, I'm a W. I want that ring before it tarnishes.
It's such an old-timey baseball thing. It's just like, I know the money's going to run out. Can we start opposite? We'll start at the Z's.
Yes, let's go backwards.
Yeah.
Let's just like a DUI stop. You know, go from Z
stop.
backwards. That year, November 7th, 1933, I did want to bring up blue laws were repealed in Pennsylvania, which meant not only could baseball games be played on Sundays, this is a big thing for the Steelers too, in their creation, along with the Eagles in 33. You could play football games on Sunday too.
Yeah.
And do you want to talk about Paul's drinking for a little bit?
Well, we're leading into 35.
Okay, so let's talk about that
Because
leading into 35.
Well, let me say this about 34 because in 34 he did get a second batting title.
Yes, he did.
And this is the really thing I want to bring up because second batting title he batted 362. Again, 217 hits. He always hits over 200 hits. When he's raking, he always hits a ridiculous amount. He got second in the MVP. And then we go into 35.
Can I say one thing, though, about that year? He not only did all that, he led the NL in runs with 122.
Yes.
I mean, you know how I found out about Paul and then later Lloyd? That's when Ichiro first broke into MLB. It's like, breaks record of Paul Waner. I'm like, who the fuck?
Yes.
Ask my dad, who's Paul Waner? Go read a goddamn book, Nancy.
That's but seriously, that's what type of, like, the level of hitting that it was Ichiro was breaking his records where you're just like, wait, who is he?
Who are those pleasant old men? That's BTO. They did TCB.
Oh man.
So 1935 though.
So his manager, Pie Tyner,
trainer, Hall of Famer himself, 25 Pirates winning baseball team, teammate,
told Paul to switch from liquor to beer. And then we get into one of Paul's biggest hitting slumps ever.
Let me just say, we like to call it talent juice, the bourbon that Paul Waner was ingesting. Casey Stengel, his manager later for the Boston Braves, said Paul was such a good slider because he never wanted to break the whiskey bottle in his back pocket.
Now, we've heard of that about one other player, Pirates player, possibly.
No, it was Tim Raines with you-know-what in his back pocket. A little bit different than talent juice.
No, it's talent powder.
Talent powder.
Come on.
Let's call it talent powder. Why don't we call it talent powder?
But so he switches to beer, and it goes into one of his biggest hitting slumps ever. He literally hits 242 for the beginning of the season. Everybody's like, what the fuck? I'll tell you, there was another quote about him playing hungover.
Oh, yeah.
Which they said that he was one of the best players to ever play hungover.
Bobby Lane, Norm Van Brocklin.
And the thing that happened in, I was trying to say, so May 18th, Pirates play the Giants. He has a horrible game. May 19th, him and Pie go to the bar. He says, I'll have a beer. And Pie says, he will like hell. Give him a shot of whiskey.
Get that man a bullet right now. Get him an old-fashioned. Keep him coming.
What does he hit for the remaining of the season?
He hits 331. It was like when Bogsy was spending time with his side piece, how much better he hit than when he was wife.
Talking Tiger Woods numbers. You know what I'm saying?
One whole chicken, just like you said, Chris.
That's what we're talking about with Paul. And then I don't think so. They asked him again to clean up. Whatever. We'll get into that in a couple of years. 35. He did make his third All-Star game, which I like that, where he was obviously an All-Star for these first, years, and then 36.
Well, I did want to bring up a couple quotes that he had about it.
Oh, about drinking?
Just as a natural hitter, being on the sauce, not the juice, but the sauce. He said, I wanted to be as relaxed as possible at the plate. Stance, mechanics. And then he says, when I walked up there with a half pint of whiskey, fresh in my gut, the ball came in looking like a basketball. If I hadn't downed my half pint of 100 proof, that ball came in like an aspirin tablet. And he was nearsighted, for fuck's sake.
Well, I'll tell you something that, and I can't remember if he said this or somebody else said this about him, but he said it was easier for him to find the center of the ball because it was so large. And you're like, I don't think that makes sense.
I don't think it works like that.
But for him, it did. And that's why it was awesome.
Casey Stengel said he couldn't, read or identify scoreboards in the outfield.
Not even, close. He literally was probably legally blind.
Oh, my God.
One of the best hitters. And this is what I mean is 36, we get those whiskey numbers, wins his third batting title.
Yes, he does.
It's 373 with 94 ribbies. And you could just tell he's back on the sauce and he's rocking.
Well, he has to be rocking, Chris, because now that he's starting to rake, the Pirates are kind of starting to compete again, because as we head into 38, they have kind of a big lead in the National League as we're heading into August, September. And you're thinking this could be their chance, finally. Unfortunately, there is a winter storm after a series they're playing on the East Coast called the Long Island Express. They're up 3.5 on the Chicago Cubs, September 18th, 1938. And they end up losing to shitty teams like Brooklyn and Philadelphia, and they lose the homer in the Gloman game to the Cubs and Gabby Hartnett. They're in Chicago, and they're out of it.
And they're out. They get second. Again, no wild card. It's brutal because people were saying this Pirates team should have had another World Series appearance.
Yeah. Imagine being the second best team in a league with. Granted, there weren't as many teams at the time, but zero wild card.
Yeah.
Where you're better than everyone else of teams winning. Granted, there aren't divisions at this point, but still, you win 95 games and you're going home for the winter.
You're going home. Yeah.
You're going back to Oklahoma watching the Dust Bowl in action. For
brutal.
Christ's sake,
It's brutal.
End up 1940s, age 37. Now he starts having some ligament issues in his knee, in his right knee after stepping on second base, going first to third. He misses basically 3 months of the season, only plays in 89 games. And that's kind of now we start to see the end of Paul's career.
Yes.
Start to take place. But
15 years with the Pirates. Mm-hmm. But you're right. This is right where he starts to become a bit of a journeyman, starts to bounce around a little.
Bob Elliott starts playing right field for him. Vince DiMaggio's playing center for his younger brother Lloyd. They're in rebuilding. But one quote that I had, which speaks to the type of professional he is, he said, "When a young fellow comes along, somebody has to move over, and now it's me. I have no regrets." That's his motto. That and everyone Wang Chung tonight.
That's right.
But no, I mean, like, that's a very professional thing
really
for an old ball player. It's like we talked about in the Alomar episode and stuff like that.
No, that's literally great because he goes to the Dodgers, the Brooklyn Dodgers, plays, I think, for 2 weeks, and then goes to the Braves, the Boston Braves. And then plays actually pretty well for the Braves for a little bit, and then bounces back to the Dodgers, gets his 3,000th hit.
Yeah, did want to bring up June 17th, 1942. Yep. They're playing Cincinnati and Boston. This is a great story. I don't know if you read anything about it, but during the game, he would have had its 3,000th hit. The ball was kind of bobbled by shortstop Eddie Jost. He knocked the ball down, and Jerry Moore of the Boston Globe, who was scoring the game, gave him his 3,000th hit. Paul, during the game, while everyone was celebrating, say, "You call that an error? That is not a hit."
Yes.
This is the type of hard-ass, like, baseball guy that he was.
Yes.
He ended up getting it later, but he even had the stones to tell the umpire.
Yes. You're not giving me that.
Because June 19th, he ends up getting the hit, which was awesome because it was in Pittsburgh.
Yep, and it was off of his old teammate, Rip Swell, I believe.
Snell. Or Sewell.
Sewell. There you go.
He said, "I wanted my 3,000th hit to be a clean one."
Yep.
Good for you, Paul Waner.
It was great. And then he had one plate appearance for the Yankees, called it a career, which Hall of Fame career, I have to say. The batting average and the hits. This was the other stat that I wanted to bring up. He had 8 seasons where he hit 200. He had 200 hits in a season.
I don't even think Tony Gwynn had. I mean, he won more batting titles, but I don't think he ever had that.
Well, I'll tell you, the other player that had that was our main man, Ty Cobb.
Oh my God,
and
really?
He had 9.
Oh God.
And I don't know if anybody knows this, but our producer was famously named after Ty Cobb. Because it's messed up.
Irony?
I don't know. We're going to do a Ty Cobb episode.
We need to do it. We need to do a Cobb.
We're going to get Ty in here.
Yeah. So after his career, July 21st, 1952, he's elected to the Hall of Fame.
Yep.
Had a great quote. He said, "Gee, it's what I've been looking for a long time. I had almost given up hope of making it. In fact, I guess you can say I've attached my life's ambition, any baseball player's ambition," which is... You're obviously going to get in when we talk about this guy's stats, but like this is a ball player through and through, which I think is really cool.
3 batting titles in an era where you have some ridiculous
Rogers
hitters.
Hornsby is in your league.
Yes. So yeah, he was definitely going to make the Hall of Fame. I do love the fact that I think he made the first 3 All-Star games. Just stuff like that players from this era, you're just kind of like, oh yeah, but. No World Series championships. No. 1 appearance with his brother, which I do love, and I do love the stats that they put up.
Well, I'll say this. 3,152 hits, 605 doubles, 191 triples, 113 home runs. That's over 900 extra base hits for this guy who hit 333. 1 out of every 3 trips he takes to the plate is a base hit of some sort.
And it could have been higher if his manager didn't tell him get off of the sauce.
Get off of the sauce. Well, I'll say this. This was his walk to strikeout ratio, which is why I say it's very Tony Gwynn-esque. 1,091 walks, 376 strikeouts.
It's crazy.
He, due to his hard living because, as they said, he was a guy who would always break up a no-hitter but never break up a party. He ends up dying of pneumonia and complications due to emphysema August 29th, 1965 in Sarasota, Florida. Once his baseball career was over, he went there to golf, be an old man.
And party.
Del Boca Vista style,
That's
Paul Waner running for the presidency of the complex.
Del Boca Vista.
But yes, Paul Waner, someone, if you haven't heard of him, look him up. That dude was an absolute G of the 20s and 30s. So